Hey, what's up everybody and welcome back to News Dose. So, there's been a lot of talk here recently about a Nintendo Switch successor. I think we're really getting to that point where we start hearing more official information on their next console. But interestingly enough, Nintendo, they seem to be giving some small hints as to what this console will be, and it might not be exactly what we expect. I'll kind of explain why here in just a bit. Also, a big Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 game just got announced, and oh boy, I'm excited about this one, as I think you all will be as well. As always though, if you're new to the channel and if you like this type of content, do make sure to hit those buttons below, like, subscribe, and yes, whack that bell as hard as you possibly can. With that said though, let's just go and jump right into things, starting off with a couple of Square Enix games, one being Harvestella, and then the other, Tactics Ogre Reborn. Reviews are starting to roll out for both of these games. I actually do not like that they released these games so close to one another, nor do I like that it's so close to God of War and Pokemon, but hey, it is what it is. This is Square Enix that we're talking about. Nonetheless, I do have some good news, and then I got some bad news as well. Now, we'll first start off with the bad, because Harvestella is not getting off to all that great of a start. It does have a 69 overall score on Metacritic, with the majority of the reviews being mixed. Now, the silver lining here is that currently it has 0 negative reviews, so, I mean, there is that, I guess. But at the same time, for a new IP like this, a 69 is probably not that number that's going to convince players to jump in. That's really too bad too, because I always felt that this game had some potential. It looks like Final Fantasy meets Harvest Moon or something like that. But unfortunately, looking through the reviews, I keep hearing things like it's mediocre in a lot of the things that it tries. At the end of the day though, always kind of keep in mind that reviews are just that. They're opinions and nothing more. So if this is a game that still interests you, go out and give it a try, and you might end up loving it. I mean, there was some 9 out of 10 reviews here as well. I mean, some people did really like it, so you might be one of those players. Now, as for Tactics Ogre Reborn, this is a remake or a remaster of an all-time classic tactics RPG, so, I mean, it's a little hard to kind of mess this one up. We already know that it's a good game, but that once again has been confirmed by critics, as it sits at an 85 overall score on Metacritic. Sounds like it's an improvement in almost every possible way. It's made an already great game, an even better game with things like voice acting and the number of adjustments that they made to its battle system. So, I mean, if you like tactical RPGs, this really is a must-play game. Go out and play it as soon as possible. Really, the only problem here is pretty much what I said before. I hate that this game is releasing between 2 of the biggest games of the year. I really have no idea what Square Enix is thinking half the time. This game probably would have been better suited to release in a quieter time of the year, but still, it is a great game, and definitely check it out when you get the chance. It is available on PC, PlayStation, and of course, the Nintendo Switch, in which you can pick it up right now. Next up, speaking of God of War Ragnarok, it sounds like it's had a massive launch. GfK is reporting that in the UK, in just one single day, its physical sales have already sold more than God of War 2018's first full week. Now, to put that into perspective, God of War 2018's first 3 days are the 3rd best in history for PlayStation's first-party games, with 3.1 million sold. So it's not like it's surpassing some slouch here. I mean, you're talking about already one of the best-selling games for PlayStation ever made. The other 2 games that are ahead of it are Spider-Man with 3.3 million in its first 3 days, and then The Last of Us Part 2, which sold more than 4 million. So if God of War Ragnarok has similar success outside of the UK, which I think that it might, we're looking at the very least the top 3 fastest selling game for PlayStation's first-party games of all time. And I wouldn't doubt it at all if it does surpass Spider-Man as well. Now, we'll see about The Last of Us Part 2, but I mean, I think it has a chance of surpassing that too, but, you know, either way, this is an extraordinary launch, and really, it appears it's well-deserved. I'm still playing through this game myself. But yeah, it's an amazing game, as you would expect. It's got a top-notch story, the voice acting is just superb, and the gameplay is once again phenomenal, as has always been the case for the God of War series. Now, a new controller also just got announced for the PlayStation 5. We are starting to see more of these Pro-style controllers pop up, and this is another option, especially if you prefer an asymmetrical design. This is the Razer Wolverine V2 Pro, which sports that offset analog stick layout, which a lot of people do prefer. The Switch Pro controllers use this layout, GameCube does, that's an all-time favorite, Xbox does as well, and if you do like that type of design, well, now you do have the PlayStation 5 Pro controller that you can pick up. The Wolverine V2 of course offers a lot more than just that though. It's got tactile action buttons, it's got customizable triggers to where you can either use a short pull or a long pull depending on what games you're playing. It's got 6 remappable buttons including 4 on the back, and it even has interchangeable analog sticks. On top of all that, because why not, it's also got RGB lights. I mean, obviously RGB lights, that's the signs of a true pro. But for real, if you are interested, you can go to Razer's store where it costs a grand total of just $250. Yeah, it's quite expensive, and it is missing some features from Sony's first-party PlayStation 5 controllers, such as internal speakers, adaptive triggers, and haptic feedback. Unfortunately, this controller does not have any of that, so $250 might not necessarily be a stellar price point, but at the same time, if you really want a pro PlayStation 5 controller with offset analog sticks, you do now have that option with the Razer Wolverine V2 Pro. Let's go and talk about Nintendo though, and the maybe soonish Switch successor. There has been a lot of speculation about Nintendo's next console as of recent. We are heading into the Switch's 6th year, and even though it's still selling extraordinarily well, Nintendo will eventually still put a new console out on the market. The question really is when, and also what will it be? Now, as for when, I think we could start hearing a lot more about this console maybe next year, whether that be officially or unofficially. But really, it is hard to pinpoint the exact year as to when it will release, because while the Switch might be showing its age, at the end of the day, it's still selling, again, like I said before, extraordinarily well. That could put Nintendo in a no rush mode, but at the same time, they don't want a situation where it's like the Wii to the Wii U, where all of their momentum had died by the time the Wii U had released. Now, to be fair, I think that console had bigger issues than just momentum alone, because a lot of its problems actually came down to its messaging and also the casual market. They just moved on over to mobile phones. Either which way, though, I do think that there's a good chance that we're going to get the Switch successor in either late 2023 or sometime in 2024. I think there's reasons to believe it could happen in either one of these years by this point, but as to what this console will actually be, well, Nintendo seemingly is already giving some small hints. Yeah, so what's happening here is that in their investors Q&A, Nintendo was asked if they plan on offering backwards compatibility for future hardware, in which they responded. In the past, we provided a service known as the Virtual Console that allowed users to play older video games on new consoles with newer hardware. As long as the hardware remained unchanged, those games could continue to be played. However, the publishing rights to video games are complicated, and we have said that we would only add titles after securing the necessary rights. Of course, video games developed for dedicated consoles were created in different development environments for each console. As a result, when the hardware changed, the development environment could not necessarily be reused, and so the video games that had been released on older consoles could not be played on newer consoles without additional modification. Recently, however, the development environments has increasingly become more standardized, and we now have an environment that allows players to enjoy older video games on newer consoles more easily than before. However, Nintendo's strength is in creating new video game experiences, so when we release new hardware in the future, we would like to showcase unique video games that could not be created with pre-existing hardware. Yeah, so that was actually a pretty long quote, but there's actually a lot happening with this response. In the first part, they seem to be referring to Nintendo Switch Online by comparing it to Virtual Console. He points out that licensing can be difficult for some of these older games, which might be why we still haven't seen certain games on Nintendo Switch Online. So, okay, fair enough. He then goes on to say that backwards compatibility is easier now than ever before, which, that there's a great sign for the Switch successor. But then the part that I feel like people are just kind of looking over is that they say with their new hardware, they want to showcase unique video games that could not be created in pre-existing hardware. So it is starting to sound like maybe the Switch successor is not just going to be a simple jump in terms of power. They want to continue that philosophy of doing something different. And this really has kind of been their thing since the Wii. That used motion controls. Then you have the Wii U that had the tablet where you use 2 screens. The same can be said with the Nintendo DS, which used dual screens. And then the 3DS, that of course used 3D. Then obviously with the Switch, of course, that has a hybrid design. So in all of these consoles, they did do something completely unique. And it sounds like they want to continue on with that for their next console as well. In fact, in another question they were asked about Nintendo accounts for their next console, they gave a very similar response by saying, "The most important thing with our dedicated video game platform is to deliver a unique gaming experience. In our development of both hardware and software going forward, we must consider ways to more easily connect our core video game business with the consumer experiences outside of our dedicated video game platform through Nintendo account." So once again, they're using that line, a unique gaming experience for their next console. So these are small hints. Whatever they're doing, it doesn't sound like it's just going to be a simple jump in power. It sounds like they're doing something different, which really makes me wonder what that will entail. I mean, for me personally, as long as they stick to the hybrid design, I'm all in for that. And I think a lot of other people feel this way as well. That hybrid design is just so amazing that fits Nintendo's games perfectly. Now, about that, I personally do believe that they will stick with that design, much in the way they did with the DS to the 3DS, while still making them unique. I think it will also have backwards compatibility as well, considering their response earlier. But what can they actually do with that design and still make it different? That's now my question here. Could they do a dual screen here? Could it be a foldable screen? Could they do 3D once again? I doubt that. Or are they going to do something different with the controllers once again? I have no earthly idea, but with them continuously bringing up this quote-unquote unique way of playing games, it does sound like they're up to something. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, though. Am I just looking too far into what they're saying here? Or do you think that they're really doing something unique once again? And if so, what do you think that could be? Let me know in the comments below. I really would love to hear your ideas about this, because I have no earthly idea what they could do. Now, we also got a big game to talk about that's coming over to the Xbox Series, PlayStation 5, and the PC. And this one I'm very, very happy to talk about, being Control 2. Now, they first mentioned last year that they were planning to do a bigger budget Control, but now they've also announced that they are partnering up with 505 Games to make it happen. They are co-publishing and co-developing it together, and considering the constant speculation, we also now know for a fact that it's going to be multi-platform. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that this game will be exclusive to PlayStation, or that it will be exclusive to Xbox, because they do have tight relationships with both. But there you go, it will be multi-platform, which is great news for everybody. That wasn't quite all they said, though, as Remedy's game director said this: "With Control 2, we'll take another leap into the unknown. It'll be an unexpected journey. It'll take a while, but to put it mildly, this is the most exciting project I've ever worked on. It's still early days, but it will be worth the wait." Then 505 Games also said, "Control is the biggest investment 505 Games has ever made, so it has a special place in our hearts. We are grateful to the whole player community that has made Control such a long-lasting and loved game, and are even more excited to bring out Control 2. So this actually sounds like a massive game, probably Remedy's biggest game ever, which, for me personally, I think that is certainly very, very exciting. Remedy is such a good and talented developer, especially when it comes to single-player, story-driven content. Alan Wake, that was a great game. You have Quantum Break. I personally feel that game was underrated. I thought it was good, personally. And then also Control, that was one of last generation's best single-player games, just period. So, I'm thrilled to see them get an even bigger budget, and it'll be really interesting to see what they can pull off with that. The only thing about all this, though, is that they did mention it's still early in development, so we're probably years away. At the very least, though, if you are a fan of Remedy, well, we do also have Alan Wake 2, which is supposedly, hopefully it won't be any type of delay, but supposedly that will release next year in 2023. Fun times for you Remedy fans ahead, myself very much included here. Let's go take a look at the poll of the day, though, where I asked you all, do you think Nintendo will raise the price of the Switch? And as you can see here, the majority of you all, being 64% of you, said no, while 31% of you said yes. So there you go. Most of you all absolutely are not expecting this, as I'm not either. Looking through the comments, Dirty Tomato kind of echoes my feelings here as well, as they say, why raise the price at the end of the generation? And that's exactly how I feel about this situation. Yes, I understand the concern about inflation right now. The MetaQuest 2, that raised in price, so did the PlayStation 5, but both of these are relatively newer products, whereas the Nintendo Switch, this is a nearly 6-year-old console that's been profitable for years. I mean, yes, their profit margin has probably shrank a bit, but I'd still be surprised if they raised the price. I mean, we were just talking about a Switch Successor earlier. That's where a more expensive price might come in. I could also see them raising the price of their games to $70, as much as the game industry already has. But yeah, I'm with the majority here. I don't think they're going to raise the price. Anyways, though, that's it for this episode. But if you liked the video, don't forget to hit the bell notification and subscribe button for more content just like this. Also, if you'd like to support the channel through Patreon, thank you for making this content possible. Peace out.